Welcome back. This is our monthly series on Spiritwind, and I'm Pam Hart, and I'd like to say that not only do we have a TV show like this discussing Spiritwind, but we also have weekly meetings at Unity of Auburn, 1212 High Street, on Wednesdays at 5:30 to discuss these same topics. And we'd like to invite you to come and join us. Today we have our regular speaker, Reverend Rick Reich, and he will be leading us in our topic for today, which we're going to talk about what we discussed in our class for October.
Right. And what we discussed, it was kind of for a Halloween topic, was the doctrine of purgatory. The doctrine of purgatory teaches that if you're lucky enough to miss hell, but not good enough to go to heaven, you go to a place called purgatory. And you go to purgatory to have your sins purged from you. For this teaching teaches that since, in this belief, it says, since no one can come before God who is not perfect, you have to go through this time in purgatory to purge you of your sins so you can finally go to heaven. Protestants, of course, beg to differ on this. They believe that Jesus died in our place, and therefore he stands in our place in the judgment. And so we don't need to do that from a Protestant perspective.
Oh, I see. And so I guess there are quite a few different sections about purgatory. Would you like to talk about a couple of them?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to say that in my book, Spiritwind for the Spiritually Adventurous, I have a whole essay in it on this very topic, which it was taken from.
Well, it sounds like doing your whole essay would be a little bit too much. So,
right.
Do you want to just look at a couple of the different points?
Yeah, I thought we'd look at just 3 points.
Okay.
First of all, kind of a history of purgatory. Then what is purgatory like? And then the most important thing I wanted to talk about is purgatory and perfectionism. So in terms of history, if we go into the Bible, the first words that are used for hell in the Bible, in the Hebrew it's Sheol, and in the New Testament it's Hades. And both of those places aren't a place of burning torment in their natural understanding of those words. Rather, they are a shadowy place where people are in the place of the dead. There's no devil with a pitchfork or any of that kind of stuff.
Burning fires.
No burning fire, and let alone a purgatory, you know. And so when we come to the time of the Apostles' Creed, we get the first hint where it says that Jesus suffered and died under Pilate, was crucified and buried, and then it says he descended into hell. And that comes from 1 Peter 3:19, where it says that Jesus went and preached to the spirits in prison. So they interpreted that as Jesus, during the time he was 3 days in the grave, went to preach to these people that were in purgatory.
Or hell.
Or hell. Now, but that's the understanding they have, because they, and when I say they, I mean the Catholic Church, because they're the founders of this doctrine. They didn't think Jesus would go to hell.
Oh.
So it had to be purgatory, see? So, and the use of the word purgatory originally meant to cleanse. Purgo means to cleanse or to clean. And the noun appeared between the years 1160 and 1180. But it seems it was first discussed at the Council of Lyons, or Lyon, in 1274.
Okay.
Dante speaks of it in the Divine Comedy, the Purgatorio, and that's in the 1300s. And then the Catholic Church finally formulated the doctrine at the councils of Florence and Trent in the 15th and 16th century. And at that point, purgatory became a dogma of the church, which means it is infallible.
But what is purgatory like? Do they describe what purgatory is supposed to be?
Yeah, and there's kind of an old view and a new view.
Oh, okay.
The new view is Martin Juggy says, he's a Catholic theologian, said that purgatory is like a great airport with arrivals from earth and departures from heaven. And there we can meet old and new friends. And C.S. Lewis kind of ran with that in his book, The Great Divorce. He was an Anglican, and they also believe in purgatory because they came from the Catholic Church. So, but to see what the old view was, St. Francis of Rome, who lived around he died in 1440, said that purgatory was divided into three parts. The lowest region of purgatory is a vast burning sea throwing huge flames where innumerable souls are plunged into its darkness. Mm-hmm. The second level is intermediate purgatory, and it had three departments.
Oh, okay.
A huge dungeon of ice,
Okay.
a cauldron of boiling oil and pitch,
Okay.
and a pond of liquid metal resembling gold or silver. And then the third level is the upper purgatory. That's where souls do not suffer much except the pain of separation from God as they near their time of deliverance into heaven.
So these are stages that people
Yeah.
might go through?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the past, some said purgatory and hell were under the earth. Mm-hmm. They, in the earth's core where the lava was. Mm-hmm. But Martin Juggy, this theologian I spoke of, says that, quote, the church leaves us free in the matter, even to the extent of denying a material fire more or less like fire we know on earth.
Oh.
So,
Well, you were entitling this class Purgatory and Perfectionism. Mm-hmm. So can you give us what you see as the element of perfection? How does perfectionism tie in to the purgatory idea?
Right. Well, the first issue that must be addressed, I think, when we look at the idea of purgatory is the character of God. And the reason is that, according to Catholic doctrine, no one can stand before God without perfect holiness, without being perfectly holy themselves. And they point to scriptures such as Exodus 33:20, where God says to Moses, you cannot see my face, for no man can see my face and live. And then Jesus even said in Matthew 5:48, be perfect, therefore, as your Father in heaven is perfect. In Catholicism, though they acknowledge the death and the resurrection of Jesus on behalf of sinners, they teach, despite this fact, people still have to go through and pay for their sins in purgatory.
Oh.
And in fact, the Catholic Catechism, even the present version we have now, says, quote, all who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified, are indeed assured of the eternal salvation, but after death they undergo purification so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven. So in the Catholic view, the perfection of Christ is not imputed or imparted to the believer. Rather, it's accomplished through a long process of purgation in purgatory.
And so this is basically a Catholic tenet.
Yeah, although there's a number, like Anglicans believe it, and a few other denominations believe it as well. But getting back to the perfection, I mean, that's why they say you got to be perfect. But just reflecting on what we know today about perfectionism, Marion Woodman, the psychologist, said, "To strive for perfection is to kill love, because perfection does not recognize humanity."
I can't see any of us being perfect in this life.
Right. In the introduction in my book, I wrote that the psychologist Marion Woodman wrote a whole book called Addiction to Perfection.
Oh my goodness.
And it speaks of the compulsive need of some people to be perfect, which for humans is an unlikely goal. And in fact, it's considered abnormal. Many of the saints who are said to have passed purgatory, in the judgment of many psychologists, would consider abnormal, and not in a good way.
But the nuns and priests are trying to be perfect.
Right. Well, and within the Catholic Church, that's what all strive for, is to be perfect. And of course, the doctrine says if they don't get it here, they'll have to do it later in purgatory. But again, on perfectionism, if as a parent I demand my children to be perfect, and I punish them when they're not, I'll end up with some emotionally troubled children. But more than this is what it says about God. It makes God a God for whom we can never be good enough. We can never, no matter what we do, we can never be good enough.
Right.
And in human life, here on earth, if you're raised in a home where you never do anything right, you're going to be screwed up when you grow up, you know. And so it makes the character of God ending up being a strict, severe, and even abusive father in that sense. Michael Law wrote, "In its root, perfectionism isn't really about deep love for being meticulous. It's about fear. Fear of making a mistake, fear of disappointing others, fear of failure, fear of success, and I might add, fear of purgatory. This doctrine is a fear generator, which the church uses to push people in the direction they want them to go."
Yes, I can see how that definitely would be a challenge for anyone in the Catholic Church to live up to those standards.
Right.
Okay, well, that was our topic for October. So now let's look at what we're going to do for the November session of Spiritwind.
Well, since November, which is next month's topic, in November is Native American Heritage Month.
Okay.
And so we're going to talk about Native Americans. If you come to the class, you'll get the most of what we're talking about, which is Native American spirituality and what that looks like. But I'm going to, at this point, talk a bit about some of the negative things we have done to the Native Americans. There's a book that in fact, I was going to say also that our class has done this a number of times because November comes around every year.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've had Stan Padilla, which many of the people in our community would know, and he's been our guest speaker on a number of occasions. But some time ago, my son got me a book signed by the author called The Cost of Free Land, Jews, Lakota, and American Inheritance, by Rebecca Claren. And it was a very powerful book for me. It tells the story of how Jewish immigrants from Europe were given Lakota land for almost nothing. And if you read the book, it shows how the U.S. government kept taking the Native people's land away.
Yep, we know that story.
Yeah,
It's pretty devastating for all of the tribes.
right.
Right. So, can you tell us about the Trail of Tears, maybe?
Okay. The Trail of Tears. That was something that the United States government forcibly relocated a number of tribes, 5 civilized, they say, quote, 5 civilized tribes, the Muscogee, the Seminole, the Chickasaw, and the Choctaw were all forcibly removed and relocated from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States to present-day Oklahoma. They were all forced to do this, and it began in 1830. The strange thing is, though this, what we call Oklahoma, was given to the Indians to put them all in to have their own place, by 1889, the government was allowing white people to move in there too, and then by 1907, Oklahoma was made a state of the United States and no longer the home of the Native Americans. Then on top of it, something that people don't know is President Lincoln, good old Honest Abe, executed 38 Dakota men who were hanged on December 26, 1862, after the U.S.-Dakota War in 1862, and it was the largest mass execution in U.S. history. And I've seen a picture of it. It shows all those men, those Native people, in a big row to be hanged, and they were all hanged together, 38 of them.
That doesn't sound very nice. Sorry for that part of our history.
Yeah.
So more recently, maybe, could you talk about Standing Rock?
Yeah, so, I mean, that was, back in 1862, but it's still going on. It's never stopped. And a perfect example is what happened at, some people will remember, Standing Rock. And it refers to the months-long protests in 2016 and 2017 by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and their allies against the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline for oil. And they planned that pipeline to go right through the native land. They didn't ask permission, they didn't do anything, they just said they were going to do it, and that's why there was this uprising. The protests, known as the Standing Rock Resistance, were characterized by the tribe's concern over environmental damage and cultural desecration, and it drew thousands of supporters. The protests were met with heavy police, military presence, violent responses, including the use of water cannons, tear gas, attack dogs against water protectors. So here, again, the native people gathered together to try to save one last place and to stop them from one more time doing it, and they did it again anyway. And this is how our president turned a deaf ear to tribal needs and went ahead and desecrated tribal land once more. And the question is, when will it stop?
Yes, a lot of treaties have been broken.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on from this negative part about American Indian, Native American spirituality and talk about
Yeah.
some other.
Well, we'll talk about some history.
Okay.
First of all, historians believe that the Native Americans descended from Northeast Asia over the land bridge from Siberia to Alaska, and that was some 12,000 years ago. They were descendants of Ice Age hunters. You think that's going all the way back to the Ice Age. Interesting aside on where the Indians or the Native Americans came from is the Mormon take. Mormons, on the other hand, identified the Native Americans with what they called the Lamanites. It talks about this in the Book of Mormon. And they say that the Lamanites were descendants of the Israelites who traveled to the New World by boat around 600 BCE. And then, what was the evidence for that? Well, it said it in their book.
Oh.
But they have dropped that, at least many have dropped it, in this century due to problems with DNA testing.
Oh.
Showed they couldn't have been.
A little science there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also in history, some believe that the Native Americans that we know today were descendants of the prehistoric Anasazis. They were ancestors of the Pueblo Indians, and they inhabited the Four Corners region from about 200 to 1300. Historically, the Spanish wanted the Indians as a source of labor. The English wanted them as potential converts, as did the Spanish too.
Right.
And the French wanted them to obtain pelts. Let's see, I'm going to skip that. Well, one thing I was going to say is in the class, I will talk about medicine men and women,
Oh, okay.
and this is getting to the spirituality part.
Right.
And I will talk about the native chiefs such as Geronimo, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Quanah Parker, who was the leading advocate of the peyote religion, and there was Wakoba, Wovaka, I should say, the prophet of the ghost dance, and then Nicholas Black Elk, a holy man and medicine man who was the second cousin of Crazy Horse and who later converted to Catholicism.
Okay. Well, speaking about religion, can you tell us a little bit about some of the Native American religious ceremonies?
Yeah. Native American tradition holds that the Creator made everything, whether animate or inanimate, and that all of it, whether animate or inanimate, are endowed with spirit.
Oh, so.
So there's the spirit of the rock, the spirit of the mountain, the spirit of the river, the spirit of the people. Everything has spirit. And that is an idea of what's called animism. But anyway, we're going to go through what are the 7 major sacred ceremonies.
Okay.
And we'll take time to go through those in the class. I'm just going to list them now. There was the Peace Pipe ceremony, the Sweat Lodge ceremony, the Vision Quest ceremony, the Sundance ceremony, the Uwipi or Spirit Calling ceremony, the Making of Relative ceremony, and I might just say something. The Making of Relative ceremony is like what we did as kids when we would be blood brothers and blood sisters.
Right.
They did something kind of like that, and that's where we got it from. And then the last one is called the giveaway ceremony, where after a person dies, most of their possessions are put out in a blanket, and people can take anything they want. of the person.
I noticed that it seems like a lot of Native Americans might even start that ceremony before they die.
They do. A lot of them will do it periodically on their birthday or something like
Right,
that.
just let people take
What they want.
take what they want.
Right. And it says something about their attachment to possessions.
And not having
that. Right.
attachment. Yeah, I think that's in the Buddhist culture also.
Giving up of things.
Right. A lot of different cultures, in
Yeah,
other words.
right,
Yeah, not
right,
just those two,
right.
but and not having that attachment to possessions helps you to
Focus more
rise.
on. Yeah.
after your death.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we close?
Well, I'll just tell you some of the things we'll be talking about besides what we've already talked about today. We'll be talking about Native American cosmologies. What does that mean? They're stories of origin. So they have many stories of origin. Most Native American origin stories do not give any more power to humans than any other part of creation.
Oh.
So
So trees have...
Yeah, humans are equal with everything else. They're not ahead of anyone or bigger or better, you know.
Right.
And the lands on which they live and revere reflect the stories which express how things came to be a mixture of mythology and the real.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that stuff.
Some
as
of
well.
the original Native American stories
Right.
that they tell.
Right.
And I think I've heard some of them, and I think they're really very interesting as far as talking to the sky
Yeah.
spirits and the rock spirits and
Right.
getting guidance from those older spirits
Yeah.
in their regular life.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a very interesting topic. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too.
And so I invite everyone else to come and join us. Remember, again, we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 at Unity of Auburn, which is at 1212 High Street. Come, be part of the discussion, learn something new, open your mind to different religions, different religious processes, spirituality. We're exploring. That's what Spiritwind is all about.
Right.
No judgment, just exploring. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.